I spent 2 years pursuing Carter. It was on the day of our anniversary. I found out he betrayed me. What broke my heart even more was his affair was with my younger sister, who had just returned from treatment abroad. I witnessed them kissing with my own eyes. In a fit of rage, I threw the anniversary gift I had prepared for Carter into the trash. I turned around and left. He called to ask me, "Dear, where's the anniversary gift you got me?" I calmly said, "It's gone." I told Carter, "Let's break up. I've had enough. Today is our 1-year anniversary. I specially bought him those limited edition sneakers he had been wanting. There are only 5 pairs in the world." My best friend exclaimed in surprise, "Maggie, those sneakers must be expensive, right? Are they limited edition?" I responded calmly while doing my makeup. "Wait until your birthday. I'll get you something better." Sophia understands that my family background is quite good, so she wasn't polite with me. She directly gave me a hug. She said, "Maggie, you are really nice, but Carter really doesn't deserve you. How could you like him? Aside from his looks, everything else is not that great." "I just like this face," I replied. "Whatever you say, I won't disturb you anymore. Hope you have a great day." Sophia finished speaking, picked up her bag and left. The others in the dorm have all gone to the library. Only I was left alone. After I finished my makeup, I went to find Carter. As a result, I saw him downstairs in his dorm, being very close with Isabella. Isabella is my sister. She just returned from abroad. Last month, my dad even held a welcome party for her. I threw my sneakers into the trash can. I took a photo while they were kissing. Then I left. Not long after, Carter called and said, "Let's break up. I have no feelings for you anymore. I'll be straightforward." He was taken aback for a moment. He asked me back, "Do you have someone else?" What a backstabber. I hung up the phone, send the photo to him, and add a note. "I feel that a man who has kissed others is not clean. I threw away the sneakers you wanted. Maybe I can still find them if I go now." Then I blocked and deleted him. To be honest, it's not true that I'm not sad. After all, I truly liked him for 2 years, even if he was just after my money. But now he has become unclean. I can't want him anymore. In the evening, I invited Sophia to a bar for drinks. Long is a place I often go to. She knows where I am without asking. When Sophia arrived, I had already had 2 glasses of whiskey. She said, "You're crazy. Why are you drinking such strong alcohol?" Sophia noticed that something was off with me. She tentatively asked, "On the anniversary, I didn't look for Carter, but I went to drink with you. Did you break up or did he do something to hurt you?" I wiped the wine from the corner of my mouth. I said with a smile, "You're the one who understands me, as expected of my good best friend. No problem, tonight I'll drink with you." Sophia's alcohol tolerance isn't as good as mine. She got drunk in no time. I called her boyfriend to come pick her up. I stayed at Long for a while by myself. I didn't expect Carter to come so quickly. He ran all the way here, breathing heavily, seeing me leisurely drinking. He immediately grabbed my wrist. He was almost pleading, "Maggie, I didn't mean to. It was that woman who approached me first. She initiated the kiss too. I only have you in my heart." I felt a little moved, turned to ask him, "Really?" He answered, "Yes, really, you have to believe me. You're the only one in my heart." He moved slightly. The wine glass in his hand shook. The wine spilled on my fingers. I frowned. I shook off his hand. I called the waiter for some tissues, slowly wiping it off. He noticed my silence. He seemed a bit anxious. He quickly said, "Let's make up. You didn't throw away those shoes, did you?" Sigh. He still cares about those shoes. Carter angrily grabbed my face, forcing me to look at him. "Are you crazy?" I threw them away. Why throw away shoes after a breakup? I already said it was her who took the initiative. Why are you still blaming me? During the year I was with Carter, he did treat me better than before. He would take me to eat his favorite barbecue, accompany me to the internet cafe to watch him play games. He even gifted me a lipstick worth 200 yuan. I was happy for quite a while. I thought this kind of life would continue forever, but unexpectedly, he still betrayed me. Looking at this once familiar person, I was momentarily stunned, but he was no longer the person in my heart. I broke free from his hand. I slapped him. I tried to steady my voice and said, "I want to break up with you. You don't want me anymore. Didn't you hear? You still want to date 2 people at the same time. Which of the things on you wasn't bought by me? I didn't ask you to pay me back the money I spent on you. I've already given you face. Don't be ungrateful." The voice was neither loud nor soft in the quiet bar, yet it could be heard clearly by everyone. Carter suddenly became the focus of everyone's attention. Everyone started to blame him. Fortunately, he was perceptive. He didn't keep bothering me. I took a few more sips of alcohol. I started to feel a bit dizzy. The bartender and I have a good relationship. I asked him to call a car for me. Then I leaned on the bar and waited. Suddenly, I caught sight of a familiar figure. The effects of the alcohol faded considerably. I quickly stood up and rushed outside, even though my mind was still hazy and my steps were unsteady. But I still persevered. In the small alley behind the bar, there was a person leaning against the wall, one leg bent against the wall, with a cigarette in hand. The cigarette's tip flickered on and off. He looked up and saw me. He threw the cigarette butt on the ground and stomped it out with his foot. He was wearing a black windbreaker, almost blending in with the night, but I recognized him at once. I couldn't help but cry. My face flushed bright red. "It looks very awkward," he asked. "Why are you crying?" I didn't say anything. Slowly walked in front of him, hugged him tightly. The man sighed, gently rubbed my hair. His tone carried helplessness. "How old are you? Crying like this over a breakup?" I ignored him, wiped my tears on his clothes. Only then did I look up at him. The streetlight in the alley suddenly lit up. I looked closely at his face, felt somewhat dissatisfied, reached out to touch his cheek. "You still know how to come back," I complained. Ethan smiled. His body swayed gently. "Are you not happy that I came back?" I muttered softly. How could I not be happy? He saw my lips move, but he couldn't hear what I said. He bent down to ask me, "What did you just say?" I stared at his face, which was so close. 2 years of longing surged to my heart in an instant. I felt as if I had mustered up all my courage. I cupped his face with both hands. I stood on my tiptoes. I gently kissed him. His lips were a bit cold. It felt completely different from the warmth I felt after drinking. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes, but he didn't pull away from me. I took advantage of the alcohol. I boldly kissed his lips. I even pried open his teeth. I explored deeply. The next morning, I had a terrible headache. I looked around. I found myself in a hotel. I have a characteristic. That is, I can remember everything that happened after getting drunk the next day. I clearly remember that sudden kiss from last night and the intimate actions in the alley. I remember them all clearly. I have always thought I was quite remarkable. But this time, I unexpectedly blushed. After the phone was fully charged, I placed it on the bedside. After turning it on, I saw many messages pop up. Sophia sent many caring messages to me. I replied briefly to a few. I told her I was fine. But that person didn't even send me a WeChat message, just left like that. How heartless. I packed my things and went back to school. As soon as Sophia saw me, she rushed over. She said angrily, "Have you seen the school forum?" Carter bit back, claiming you liked someone else and wanted to break up. Also said you were inconsistent, complaining that he has no money, said you were a spoiled young lady. Sophia knows that there's nothing between me and Carter, so she was particularly angry. I said coldly. Only he could be so confused, daring to spread rumors without evidence. "What do you plan to do?" I have purchase records and transfer records on my phone, and photos of him kissing someone else. Let's see whose problem it is. After I posted all the evidence on the forum, public opinion immediately turned around. Carter couldn't hold his head up at school. It didn't take long. His affair partner was also exposed. It was Isabella, a freshman from the School of Music and Dance. As expected, before long, my family called me back home. They said it was for a dinner gathering, but anyone could see this wasn't just a simple meal. That night, I returned home. Mrs. Anderson has watched me grow up since I was little. She came forward to greet me when she saw I was back. She quickly approached me. She softly said to me, "Today, that woman said something in front of the old man. She didn't seem very happy. You should be more careful." I patted Mrs. Anderson's hand to comfort her. "Don't worry. I won't let anyone bully me. You have watched me grow up since I was little." "Yeah, you have grown up now." Mrs. Anderson finished speaking. Emily came out of the study. She looked very happy when she saw me. "Hurry over and ask me how I've been lately," she said. "Maggie, you're finally willing to come home. Your dad misses you a lot," she said. "Oh, wasn't it you who whispered in my ear to come back?" I stated it directly. Emily looked a bit awkward. "Why are you all standing at the door? It's time to eat." Mr. Anderson walked out of the study. His face showed no expression. 3 people were sitting at the dining table, but no one had started eating. I asked, "Where's my sister? Why isn't she coming out to eat? Do you still remember you have a sister?" "Isabella has been back for quite a while. Several times she asked you to come back and welcome her. You refused to come. Now you suddenly want to call your sister to eat." Mr. Anderson is usually very tolerant of my rebellion, but that's only because he feels guilty inside. "Didn't I come back?" I smiled casually. I was getting a bit anxious waiting. I directly picked up my chopsticks and started eating. Emily hurried to call Isabella out. The girl coming down the stairs was wearing a white dress. Her lips were pale. She looked weak and frail, just like the sickly Lynn Dayu. Isabella sat down trembling. Her voice was so weak it was almost inaudible. "Dad," big sister, seeing that I didn't respond. Mr. Anderson put down his chopsticks. He patiently advised a few words. I slowly took a sip of soup. "Speak, I know. Isabella, right? She goes to the same school as me. We have some history together. I heard that Isabella was spoken ill of on your school's forum. You should handle it. I'll cover any costs needed. It seems Mr. Anderson still doesn't know the truth of the matter." I pretended to know nothing. I asked, "So that person is your sister? The forum says that girl is seducing other people's boyfriends, sister. Is it really you?" The chopsticks suddenly fell on the table. Isabella swayed unsteadily, like a flower about to wither. "I've heard about it. Isabella said that girl framed her. You have to believe your sister," Mr. Anderson said. I continued to ask, "So do you know that girl is me? My good sister is stealing my boyfriend." I smiled gently. It seemed very innocent. I saw Mr. Anderson's expression suddenly change. Emily immediately started to cry. "Anderson, you have to believe Isabella wouldn't do such a thing. It must be that man with ulterior motives that made both Isabella and Maggie fall for it. You have no idea how excessive those harsh words on the forum are. You must help Isabella seek justice. Both she and her mother are very sensitive emotionally. She looks exactly the same when she cries." I applaud. "It's truly wonderful." And then, I presented the evidence of Isabella trying to approach Carter to Mr. Anderson one by one. Smiling, I said, "This sister of mine, her thoughts are very delicate. I didn't care about their reactions anymore. Put down the bowl and left. I just can't stand that you're doing well." I had just walked out of the community. When I heard Isabella calling me from behind, her face was flushed. It was obvious she had run over. It seems her illness has almost recovered. And then I stopped in my tracks. I asked coldly, "Your mother is no longer here. How long do you think Mr. Anderson will treat you well? He has always indulged you, mainly because he feels indebted to you. Now that I am back, I will always be with them, gradually replacing your position, with my mother around. You will eventually be kicked out of our house," Isabella said, speaking of my mom. I was instantly furious. I stepped closer to her, pointing my finger at her chest. With every step forward, she took a step back. "I suggest you better not mention my mom in front of me, because you don't deserve to, even though my mom is no longer here. Your mom was just someone who rose to power through manipulation. Don't think I don't know about the disgraceful things your mom did back then. I wouldn't mind telling Mr. Anderson everything I know. Let's see if he will still treat you this well," I said angrily. "You can't provide any evidence," Isabella quickly explained. "Evidence can always be found. Don't be foolish," and I raised my hand and hit her hard. "This is a lesson for stealing my things." Isabella's cheek immediately became red and swollen. "Go home," I said angrily as I looked at her. I took out a wet wipe from my bag. I wiped my hands and tossed it at her face casually. Then I turned and walked away. In the afternoon, there are 2 open classes at school. Sophia has already saved me a seat. I walked into the classroom as the class bell rang. As soon as Sophia saw me, she stared at me with a curious expression. I whispered, "Is there something on my face? You've been staring at me. Did you hear that Ethan is back?" Hearing that name, I couldn't help but think of the kiss from last night. My face turned red all of a sudden. I gently nodded. Sophia asked. "His friends prepared a welcome party for him. They even sent us an invitation. Are we going?" "Of course we're going. There are some things I need to clarify in person." Sophia nodded. She tapped my shoulder and said with a smile, "I know you're thinking about him. If it weren't for the fact that Carter looks a bit like Ethan, how could you possibly tolerate him for 2 years? Being seen through." I'm a bit embarrassed. I reached out to cover her mouth, acting like I'm angry. "Don't talk nonsense." The class was halfway through. I received a message from an old friend. I opened it to take a look. I couldn't help but laugh. That day was the welcome dinner. I specially dressed up for it. Sophia joked as soon as she saw me. "When did you ever dress up so seriously?" "It seems it still depends on the person. Stop joking around. Where's your boyfriend?" I asked. "I let him go first. I have to go with you." She linked her arm with mine. We set off together. The destination was Ethan's private villa. I haven't been here in a long time. Stepping into this place again, childhood memories flooded back in an instant. When I was a child, My family and Ethan's family are neighbors. At that time, my mom was still around. I was particularly mischievous. I always loved to sneak in through the back. Instead, I would climb in through the window into Ethan's room. Sometimes I would catch him changing clothes. I also took advantage of my young age and naivety, so I would boldly watch him. Maggie. He always called my name with anger. He would pull me out before he even finished getting dressed. I was quite bold. Sometimes I would take the chance to touch his abs. By the way, we are 6 years apart. At that time, I was 14. He was 20. It was the prime of youth. I often went to his house to play. Slowly, I started to have some inappropriate thoughts. As I grew older, I became much more mature, but the feelings in my heart have never changed. I got into the university he attended. I saw him return as an outstanding graduate to give a speech. I watched him from afar in the crowd. I thought I had the courage to confess to him, but he suddenly went abroad. He left without saying anything. Maggie, yeah, what are you thinking about? I lowered my head. When I came to my senses, I said softly, it's nothing. Most of the faces at the party were unfamiliar. I searched for a long time, but I didn't see Ethan. Sophia stayed with me for a while before going to find her boyfriend. It really felt a bit inconsiderate. I found a quiet corner to sit down. I tried to avoid interacting with people, but my eyes kept searching for him. I searched for a long time but still couldn't find him. I felt a bit down, so I sat on the sofa and took out my phone. I scrolled to a WeChat account I hadn't contacted in a long time. I was thinking about whether to make a call. Why not make a call? A deep voice came from behind me. I was just about to turn around. I felt a weight on my head. He gently touched my hair. The familiar scent of herbs immediately wafted into my nose. I tried to control my voice, not letting it sound off, at the same time avoiding his hand. Don't touch my hair. It's all messed up, he asked. Are you still mad at me? Ethan walked over from behind. He sat down next to me. The sofa sank slightly. He sighed and created a little distance from me. He said, I left without saying hello back then. It was my fault, but I'm back now, aren't I? Then you should say something. Why did you leave without saying goodbye before? Ethan awkwardly touched his nose. There were many issues at the company back then. My dad wanted to expand into foreign markets, so I rushed to go abroad. But then you didn't reply for so long. Now he had no way to explain. He couldn't just say he didn't plan to come back then, so he must have deliberately not contacted me. I can tell he doesn't want to say much, so I didn't continue to ask. All right, have you forgiven me? No, you should leave. It's not appropriate for you as the host to hide here. I pretended to push him. He grabbed my wrist. He smiled slightly and said to me, I'll go ahead for a moment. I'll be back to find you soon. I nodded in agreement. I didn't expect that. We both had a tacit understanding. No one mentioned what happened that night again. I waited for a while. Ethan didn't come. Instead, Carter showed up. He saw me. He was momentarily stunned. Then he showed a happy expression. He quickly ran over to ask, Did you come specifically to find me? Do you regret it? Do you still want to be with me? His continuous questions revealed his excessive confidence. I disgustedly shook off his hand. Are you okay? I was just about to ask you how you ended up here. Carter replied, Today is my uncle's welcome dinner. My dad sent me here, your uncle. I raised my voice. Are you talking about Ethan? Yeah. Is there a problem? After a brief moment of surprise, I quickly calmed down. Ethan and Carter both have the last name Anderson. People often say that nephews resemble their uncles. I can't believe I didn't think of that. Go away. I don't want to see you. I'm not here for you anyway. Carter thought I was making excuses, so he sat down without hesitation. Right next to me, he reached out to grab my hand. I have already broken up with Isabella. There really is nothing between us. I've been thinking about it these days. Actually, I still love you the most. I understand that you still have feelings for me. Let's get back together. I promise to treat you well. He keeps pestering me. It makes me very uncomfortable. Let go of me. Maggie, let me explain. I said let go of me. Did you hear me? Seeing me really disgusts you. His expression suddenly changed. He pressed his hands on my shoulders. Shaking me, he said, We've been together for so long. How can you bear to leave me? You betrayed me first. If you keep this up, I'll call for help. This is my uncle's welcome party. All the guests are my acquaintances. Who do you think you can call? After he finished speaking, he moved closer to me, trying to kiss me. Though I tried to resist, he was stronger than me. Just as I was about to headbutt him, he was suddenly thrown off. Carter fell heavily to the ground. I immediately smelled that familiar scent of vanilla. He gently helped me fix my messy hair, asked with concern, Are you okay? I shook my head. It's nothing. Carter on the ground got up, just about to get angry as soon as he saw someone. He immediately calmed down. Uncle, you still dare to call me uncle? What are you doing? She is my ex-girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend. Ethan was stunned for a moment. I'm afraid he might misunderstand, quickly said. No, it's an ex-boyfriend. We have already broken up. Carter was particularly worried that Ethan would be angry, because his father has always been at a disadvantage in front of Ethan. He doesn't have much status in the family either, so Carter has always held a sense of awe towards Ethan. He quickly explained, there are some misunderstandings between us. I came to reconcile with Maggie. Misunderstanding. I saw you betray me with my own eyes. You say it's a misunderstanding. After some conversation, Ethan finally figured out what happened. He said to Carter, you can go. Don't make me repeat myself. Carter wanted to say something more, but upon seeing Ethan's expression, he closed his mouth. He left with a sullen face. He turned his back to me. He sighed. He looked a bit tired. While I wasn't around, you found yourself a boyfriend like this. I curled my lip and said, I must have misjudged him. He continued, all right, I'll take you back to school. I shook my head and said, no way, I want to stay at your place. You're not that young anymore. Right, I want to stay here, just for one night. You have so many rooms at your place. There must be a place for me to stay. I felt a bit dazed. It felt like I was back in my childhood. He thought for a moment, and finally gave in. Then you play first. I'll find you after I'm done. I sent a WeChat message to Sophia. Tell her not to wait for me. She should go home first. She replied with a funny meme. It's a Chibai character. It keeps nodding, and included a phrase. I understand. I won't say more. Put the phone away. Walked to the side and started eating. Last time I drank too much because I was in a bad mood. This time I drank too much because I was too happy. When Ethan found me, my face was already red. I had even taken off my high heels, curling up in the corner of the sofa. He has always been good to me, like taking care of a younger sister. Did you drink too much? Ethan's tone carried a hint of teasing. His original vanilla scent seemed to have faded, probably masked by the smell of alcohol on me. Watching him walk closer, I opened my arms, stubbornly said, I want a hug. Then I hugged him tightly like a koala. Only the two of us were left in the villa. Ethan's body was a bit cool, but my face was burning hot. I leaned against his neck. After feeling a bit better, I gently rubbed against his neck. My lips accidentally brushed against his neck. I kept calling out, Ethan. Ethan's body suddenly stiffened. My throat was dry. I said hoarsely, don't move. The room is on the second floor. He carried me upstairs all the way. I kept squirming in his arms. I was a bit tipsy. My voice was soft, like I was being spoiled. I really miss you. Why did you leave alone? You didn't answer my calls, and you didn't reply to my messages. I almost ran after you. My breath was warm against Ethan, making him feel a bit heated. Maggie, this isn't good for you. I barely understood what he said. He shook his head foolishly. It's not dangerous. In the 2 years since Ethan left, the villa has always been cleaned. He arranged for me to stay in his own room. The room's decor is exactly the same as before. Ethan wanted me to lie down, but I clung to him. I accidentally pushed him onto the bed. I straddled his legs. Leaning slightly backward, my eyes fixed on his, this scene. Does it feel a bit familiar? I whispered. I lifted my head to kiss his lips. His lips were cool. It felt very comfortable. I didn't want to part. Ethan hadn't drunk too much. He was still very clear-headed. He gently pushed me away. Maggie, you've had too much to drink. His cold lips moved away. I'm a bit unhappy. I'm not drunk. Then tell me, who am I? You are Ethan. I will always recognize you. You know I'm Ethan. But you still kissed me. After being rejected, I felt a bit hurt inside. My eyes suddenly turned red. Ask him, why didn't you let me kiss? Ethan gently stroked my head. He said, you are drunk. This isn't a decision you make when you're sober. I can't let you ignite things. I ignored his words. Leaning in again, I gently touched his lips with my tongue. Feeling that slight coolness, he paused for a moment. Then he took the initiative to get closer, making it almost hard for me to breathe. A tense and humid atmosphere immediately filled the air. But soon, rationality took over. Ethan opened his eyes, gently pushed me away. Speak. Maggie, you should go rest. He pushed me back onto the bed. He helped me wipe my face with a wet towel. After I calmed down, he went into the bathroom by himself. When I woke up in the morning, I had a severe headache. This time, the alcohol was stronger than last time. There was a hangover remedy on the nightstand. There was a note underneath it. There was an urgent matter at the company. I have to leave first. Breakfast is downstairs. After you finish eating, have the driver take you back to school. Seeing that familiar handwriting, I truly realized he had indeed come back. After taking the hangover remedy, memories flooded back all at once. I stood in the bathroom. I touched my lips in front of the mirror. For a moment, I felt a bit dazed. Obviously, he was genuinely emotional yesterday as well. After returning to school, Carter started bothering me again. He asked me, "What is your relationship with my uncle? Why is he so biased towards you?" His aggressive attitude and off-putting expression. I really can't understand why I liked him back then. I truly don't want to be entangled with him anymore. I've decided to make things clear. I'll tell him. What I like is Ethan, and you are just his substitute. Back then, I thought you were like him. That's why I was willing to be with you for 2 years. Now that he's back, I'm definitely not choosing you anymore. You better understand this. Stay away from me. Otherwise, I'll make you pay back the 2 years I've spent on you. Additionally, you are not a match for your uncle. I'm very familiar with him. If you don't believe it, go ahead and try. Seeing me so determined, Carter was so scared that he ran away. At that moment, applause erupted from behind. Isabella said in her delicate voice, "What a great show." I turned around. I saw Isabella standing there. I wasn't surprised. I glanced at her. I asked, "Is there something you tell me? What would Mr. Anderson think if he knew his daughter was getting too close to the youngest son of the Anderson family? What would he think?" Mr. Anderson has business dealings with Ethan. The two have a good relationship, like brothers. Ethan has an older brother, who is also Carter's father. He loves to drink and gamble. As a result, he squandered all the family's money. Later, he went to find Mr. Anderson. He wanted another chance, but Mr. Anderson had lost trust in this son. He decided to pass the company on to Ethan. Carter is not well liked in the Anderson family, and he doesn't have much money, because I have money. That's why they are willing to be with me. So what? I don't think this affects Mr. Anderson at all. She really looks innocent, according to seniority. You have to call Ethan uncle. Don't worry about my matters. It's better to care more about your mom. Make sure to cherish the time left at my house. What do you mean by that? I smiled at her. She said with her head tilted, "Guess what? I received a message from an old friend. In the past, Emily only poured drinks at the club. That was the first anniversary of my mom's passing. Mr. Anderson was in a bad mood after visiting my mom's grave. He went out to dinner with a few friends. As a result, he got drunk. Emily saw that Mr. Anderson was wealthy, so she tried to get close to him. Unexpectedly, she got pregnant after just one time. After quietly giving birth to Isabella, she went to find Mr. Anderson. A paternity test proved that Isabella is Mr. Anderson's daughter, so Mr. Anderson accepted Emily. Emily was not in good health when she gave birth to Isabella. That's why Isabella has been weak and sickly since childhood. Mr. Anderson felt he had been a bit demanding of Emily at that time. He has always felt guilty about it, so he sent her abroad to recuperate. Now, I found the surveillance records from that year. I also got in touch with Emily's colleague. Emily drugged Mr. Anderson's drink. She also deliberately made others leave. The colleague mentioned the drug was actually provided by Emily. The surveillance footage recorded the process of their transaction. The evidence is complete. I anonymously sent all the materials to Mr. Anderson. He should have received them over the years. Emily has said many untrue things in front of Mr. Anderson. Her attitude disgusts me. She even tried to take my mother's place, naively thinking that if the daughter returned, they could succeed, thinking about how they would be driven away. I couldn't help but laugh on Sophia's birthday. I gave her the bag she had always wanted. She hugged me tightly like a koala. She said sweetly, "My darling, I knew you loved me the most. Give me a kiss." I pushed her away. She said impatiently, "Wants to kiss me? That will cost extra. Long, are you free?" After Sophia went to find her boyfriend, I took a taxi to Long. I pre-ordered the cake. It has already been delivered. To celebrate Sophia's birthday, I specifically cleared the venue. I also invited our good friends from university to join the fun. I will cover all the expenses for my friend Sophia. I take special care of her. University life is coming to an end. I want to give her an unforgettable birthday memory. Sophia just walked in the door. The confetti suddenly exploded. It startled her. "Baby, happy 21st birthday." I saw her eyes turn red. I immediately joked, "Don't be so moved, I can't handle it." She replied, "You're really annoying." Sophia was surrounded by everyone cutting the cake. I was singing a birthday song on the side. I didn't even notice someone behind me. Wait until everyone has left. Suddenly, someone pulled me away. Fortunately, I smelled a familiar scent of vanilla. Otherwise, I would have thought I was being taken away. My hand hurts. My hand hurts. Ethan seems a bit unhappy. He held my hand with a lot of force. He heard my cry. He immediately loosened his grip. He turned around, staring at me. There seemed to be a flame in his eyes. It could explode at any moment, he asked. What's wrong? I asked softly. Ethan took a deep breath, slowly exhaled, trying to calm down. The guy standing next to Sophia, is he your boyfriend? I don't understand, asked. Yeah, is there a problem? How long have they been together? We've been together since our freshman year. It's been almost 3 years now. Is there a problem with that? Ethan's emotions, suppressed for years, finally couldn't be contained. He stepped forward. He cupped my face in his hands. He kissed me forcefully, but it was just a gentle press of his lips against mine. My face immediately turned bright red. You haven't been drinking, have you? What's with the sudden change? He suddenly hugged me tightly. Speak slowly. On the day I went abroad, I came to find you. I saw you having a great time with a guy. Your relationship seemed really good. I thought he was your boyfriend. I think college should be a relaxed and enjoyable time. I didn't want to make you sad because of my departure, so I didn't tell you before I left. Later, I saw you were always looking for me. I thought you just needed some time to adjust, but then you stopped looking for me. I thought you had moved on. He held me too tightly. I'm a bit out of breath. I want to break free. I heard him mistake Sophia's boyfriend for mine. I couldn't help but laugh. Why are you back again, seeing me struggle? He hesitated for a moment. He let go. Finally, I could breathe deeply. My mind is a mess. I don't know if it's because of the kiss or because I held my breath too long. I saw you in Carter's friend circle. He didn't say you were his girlfriend, but I saw your photo. I couldn't help it. I impulsively came back to find you. I didn't expect to run into you right after your breakup. You even kissed me proactively under the influence of alcohol. Speaking of which, I noticed the corners of his mouth slightly rise. Those 2 times were because I was drunk. I denied it. So why did you call me out now? Just to tell me that the boy is not the boyfriend I mistakenly thought you had. Although I say this, deep down I feel a bit hopeful. I can't help but secretly look at his expression. I like you. These 4 short words have stirred up huge waves in my heart. Since the moment you bravely climbed through my window into my room, I have had different feelings for you. It's just because of our identities and the age gap. I have never dared to tell you. So many years have already passed. This time I don't want to miss it again. Ethan's tone is serious. His attitude is cautious. I stare at him blankly. It turns out, during those years, my heartbeat was not the only strong reaction. The person I have secretly liked actually loves me deeply as well. Why don't you say something? Ethan looks a bit uncomfortable. I know you haven't been drinking. Give me a clear answer. I didn't wait for him to continue speaking. I expressed all my feelings with a kiss. I asked him, don't you understand my heart yet? Twice drunk, twice kissed. What more do I need to do for you to understand how much I love you? As I was saying, my tears flowed down unconsciously. I often sneak over to his house just to catch a glimpse of him. Sometimes I happen to see him changing clothes. I would blush unconsciously. Sometimes he is focused on his homework. I quietly lean by the window, silently watching him. Sometimes he is troubled by work stress. I really want to tell him, you can talk to me, although I can't be of much help, but I can make you a little happier. Having a secret crush on someone in youth. Once that feeling starts, it's hard to forget. A mark was silently left in my heart, so much so that during college, I saw someone who looked like you. Even though I knew it wasn't you, I still couldn't help but approach for 2 years, until I met you again. My heart, which had already calmed down, reignited hope. I cried so hard, my shoulders kept shaking, my makeup was all ruined. All right, I understand what you mean, don't cry anymore. Ethan gently lifted my tear-streaked face. A hint of a smile emerged from his throat. You're still laughing at me. I got angry. I shook off his hand, wiped away my tears with one hand, turned to leave. It was too awkward. I had just taken 2 steps when my wrist was grabbed by him. As I turned, he pressed me against the wall. Ethan was wearing a loose black hoodie. He pulled the hood up and put it on his head. Wrap me in your arms. He approached step by step. I could feel his breath surrounding me. Suddenly, the streetlight in the alley went out. It became pitch black around me. All I could hear was the sound of my heartbeat and my breathing mixed together. He wore a large hat. The brim almost covered half of my face. It made my vision dim. He suddenly turned his head, close to my cheek. His lips gently brushed against my earlobe. He lowered his voice and whispered in my ear, "Do you know how hard it was for me to hold back that night you were drunk? You were always close to me. But if I had touched you then, I wouldn't be human anymore, so what about now? As soon as the words left my mouth, I realized I was trembling uncontrollably. His breathing became a bit rapid. Of course, I won't endure it now. That's all I have to say. His lips gently brushed against my earlobe. Then he kissed down along my jawline. His nose lightly grazed my cheek. Finally, he tenderly and meticulously kissed my lips. At first, he was just gently testing. Then his movements suddenly became intense, stronger than the previous 2 times. As if he wanted to draw me in completely, he slightly loosened his lips. Breathing heavily, he said, to catch my breath. You've been in a relationship. How can you not know how to kiss? I haven't kissed him. He seemed quite satisfied with my answer. One hand grabbed my wrist, and he kissed me again after 10 minutes. My lips were almost numb. I noticed a change in his body. I panicked all of a sudden. You, help me. I can't do it. I'll take you with me. The next day, Sophia asked me as soon as she saw me, where did you go yesterday? It was my birthday. You just disappeared. I smiled a little awkwardly. I didn't mean to hide it from her. Just say it directly. I'm with Ethan now. What did you say? Fortunately, there were only the 2 of us in the dorm. Sophia's scream was so loud it almost shattered the window. Keep your voice down. You guys last night? Was it that? Don't talk nonsense. We haven't reached that point yet. As soon as Sophia heard this, her face showed a look of regret. I saw you didn't come for the second half. I thought you guys were busy with something else. After saying that, she even gestured with her hands. I pretended to be angry. I acted like I was going to hit her. She said with a smile, "Stop messing around. I've got to go for my internship. My boyfriend is waiting for me downstairs. If I don't leave soon, I'll be late. Okay, you should hurry and go. The other 2 people in the dorm are preparing for their graduate exams. Sophia has already found an internship. I originally planned to study abroad before Ethan returned. Since he isn't coming back, I plan to go find him. But he has already returned now. All the plans need to be adjusted. Just before rearranging everything, there's still a good show waiting to unfold. Last night, I received a text from Mr. Anderson, but due to special circumstances, I couldn't reply immediately. Now I can finally go home. I hadn't even entered the house when I heard Emily and Isabella crying out. Emily's voice was hoarse. Her clothes were also disheveled. She was sitting on the floor, wiping her tears. Isabella was sitting next to her. Mr. Anderson originally wanted to continue talking about her, but when he saw me come in, she waved her hand angrily, sat down on the sofa. I pretended to know nothing, asked, "Emily, what happened? What's wrong?" Isabella looked very excited as soon as she saw me. She wanted to rush towards me, but was stopped by Emily. Isabella said bluntly, "Maggie, you must have done it on purpose. These are all made up by you, right? Did you plan this all along? Just waiting to drive us mother and daughter away today, just because your boyfriend likes me? Is this how you want to treat me?" I haven't had the chance to explain. Mr. Anderson pointed at Isabella and said, How can you wrongfully accuse your sister like this? The evidence is right here. What else do you have to explain? Additionally, Maggie's boyfriend was taken by you, right? You 2 mother and daughter are really alike. Get out immediately." Hearing that she was being kicked out, in a moment of desperation, Emily slapped Isabella. "It's one thing for you to misbehave yourself, but how can you wrong your sister? Quickly apologize." Isabella looked shocked, covering her swollen face. She rushed out of the house in a panic. Emily did not chase after her, only focused on crying about her efforts for Mr. Anderson. "Dad, if there's nothing else, I'm heading back to school now." Mr. Anderson could no longer speak. He just waved his hand to let me go. I had just stepped out and hadn't gone far when I saw Isabella lying on the ground, trembling all over. It seems she got too emotional, and her illness flared up again. I walked over, sank down, calmly watching her convulse, slowly took out my phone and called for an ambulance. Then he turned and left. Later, Mr. Anderson told me Isabella's health had deteriorated. She could only stay in the hospital to recuperate. He spent money to send Isabella to a hospital in the suburbs. He asked Emily to take care of her. They would never come back. I dated Ethan for half a year. After graduation, he couldn't wait to take me home. Isn't that a bit too fast? I was a little nervous. Ethan held my hand tightly. He comforted me. I've waited for so long. How could I be in a hurry? I took a deep breath. I followed Ethan into the house. Ethan's parents and Mr. Anderson were sitting at the dining table. The aroma of the food wafted over, but I was so nervous that I couldn't move. My palms were sweating. Ethan turned to look at me. "What are you daydreaming about? Come on in." Ethan pulled me down to sit. Mrs. Anderson said with a smile, "You child, you got together with Maggie so quickly, and you didn't even tell us. We were still thinking of helping you arrange a blind date. Maggie has grown up in front of us. Don't let her down," Mr. Anderson also reminded. Ethan nodded in response. "I originally planned to wait until Maggie graduated to tell you." They were chatting happily, but I felt a bit uncomfortable. I forced a smile. Looking at Mr. Anderson, I politely called out, "Dad, you still know I'm your dad, you little rascal. You actually took away my daughter, whom I raised with great effort." Mr. Anderson pretended to be angry, acting like he was about to flip the table. Mr. Anderson and Mrs. Anderson quickly stopped him. Mrs. Anderson immediately said, "Maggie is still here. Don't be impulsive." Mr. Anderson sighed and said helplessly, "I noticed long ago that this guy has feelings for Maggie, so that's how it is." I immediately stood up to protect Ethan. "I was the one who liked him first. Please don't say any more." Mr. Anderson heard this. His face turned even redder. He didn't recover for quite a while. After dinner, Ethan and I hurriedly left the villa. At night, a gentle breeze blew. He held my hand and we walked by the river. Suddenly, a cold ring slipped onto my middle finger. I looked down. He smiled and said, "This is an engagement ring. When I officially propose, I will give you a bigger one. Your whole life will be firmly held by me." I sniffed, trying to hide my inner emotions. I responded softly. He moved a little closer, deliberately playing dumb. "What did you say?" I didn't hear clearly. I was just about to speak. He gently kissed me. No need to say more. We both understand each other's feelings. After being intimate, he slowly got up, whispered in my ear, "Tonight, I don't want to wait any longer. Let's go home." I instantly understood what he meant, although the night breeze was a bit cool. I felt warmth all over my body. As soon as he entered, he immediately picked me up, placed me on his waist. He couldn't wait to go upstairs. He directly pushed me onto the sofa. I bit my lip and asked, "Why are you in such a hurry? Why not turn on the light in the darkness?" There were only the sounds of clothes rubbing and his low laughter. "Want to turn on the light? Then go ahead and turn it on." Seeing that he was about to turn on the light, I quickly grabbed him. He already guessed that I would do this. He suddenly went limp, leaning against me. With the sound of clothes falling to the ground, he lowered his head and kissed my lips. He whispered, "It seems you are even more anxious than I am." It turns out, he was indeed looking forward to this long-awaited intimacy. My unrequited love story came to an end, but my days with Ethan continued to move forward. Fortunately, this unrequited love ultimately had a beautiful ending. We finally fulfilled our wishes. On the day of the wedding, Ethan, who usually seems indifferent and doesn't care about anything, at the moment when I saw Mr. Anderson holding my hand and walking out the door, he cried particularly hard. Later, I asked him, "I never saw you cry when you were with me before. Why are you crying even harder than I am on our wedding day?" He said, "I have been with you through many important moments, but now, I'm no longer just an observer, but your family now. From now on, every moment of yours, I will be by your side. Maggie, I love you. I want to tell Ethan, I love you too."